All right. Testing 1, 2. Just making sure you can see me and hear me. You should be able to see me if you're in the Facebook group, the GuitarZoom community. Otherwise, you would have gotten an email or something. So go ahead and throw out a hello and let me know if you're out there and how things are going for you. And we'll go ahead and get started. Hey, John. How you doing, bud? All right. Craig is here. How you doing, bud? Pete is here. Mick is here from Australia. Awesome. Very nice. Let's see here. Who else? So I missed Irene. Irene is here. How you doing, Irene? I have the chat over here, too, so if I'm looking over here, that's what I'm doing. Rick Borders is here. Martin LaBelle is here. Tony is here. John is here. Leah is here. Very cool. I am doing great. Thank you so much for asking, Leah. Okay, Steve. Awesome. Brian from Facebook is on. Very good. Okay, Clayt is here. How you doing, buddy? All right. So it's just our monthly hangout, and so if you've got questions about stuff, we'll talk about whatever it is that you're interested in, but I just want to say, hey, remember, if you're on Facebook, you may have to use your name because Facebook has a privacy thing that doesn't allow your name to pop up. All I see is Facebook user. So if you're on Facebook and you're watching me, make sure that you put your name in so I can say hello to you personally. So David is here from Ohio. Butch is here. Sean is here. Very nice. How you doing, everybody? John Lee is here from Connecticut. Very cool. Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, what we're going to do here is just for about 45 minutes or so, we're just going to hang out. I'm going to answer any questions you might have about literally anything that I can. Okay? Dean is here. Very nice. Oh, there we go. Stephen from Oklahoma. I see you now there. Craig is here. How you doing, buddy? Robert is here. He says, good day, Steve. How you doing? Very nice. All right. So anyway, if you're new to the GuitarZoom group, the last Monday of every month I go live, unless it's on, a holiday or something like that. Otherwise, the last Monday of every month I go live at this exact same time so we can hang out, chat, talk, whatever. Let's see. Joe Romer is here from LA. How you doing, Joe? And let's see. I think I said hi. Danny is here. And then Clayt says, do you ever dabble with the dobro? I do not. Not that I wouldn't mind playing a dobro. It's just, my excuse, if you will, is that I never have enough time to practice what I normally do, let alone something else. But I think the dobro is awesome. I have a buddy that plays very, very well. Bill is here. How you doing, Bill? Good to see you, too. Remember, if you're on Facebook, use your name. That way I can say hello to you directly. Scotty Reed is here. And let's see here. Mark asks about alternate picking. Let's see here. Let me pull this up. Mark asks you spoke about alternate picking and economy. What about directional? Well, directional picking really isn't that different from. It depends on how you look at it. Like there's different definitions of directional picking, but directional picking really is understanding that if your pick winds up being down, you pick down. If you're up on the top here and you wind up on an up, for instance, you would pick up. So directional picking, again, there's different definitions of directional picking, but directional picking was like a different term for economy picking. So directional picking, is again same purpose. If you've got a down, you're going into another down, or if you've got an up, you're going into another up. So if you think about direction, you might have a different definition of it, but if you think about directional picking in that perspective, obviously economy picking and directional picking continues on with more downs or more ups if you're doing, like, for instance, a sweep pick or something like that. In today's discussion, what we were talking about is how to think about different ways of being able to use any of those ideas to make your picking and your playing either A, more efficient, or B, sound the way you want it to sound. Because for me, I've never been the kind of player, and certainly never been the kind of teacher that I don't think that most players just do one thing, and then that's all they ever do. Like, I think most players do, you don't even always pick. Sometimes you do more legato stuff. Like for me, I don't do as much picking on the return. I do more legato on my return than I do my staccato on the forward motion. But it depends on what pattern I'm using. It depends on what I'm doing with it. So hopefully that kind of makes sense. Let's see here. Hey, Steve from Southern Cal, how you doing? Your name isn't on there, though, so I don't know who you are. Leah says, will the improvisation webinar tomorrow be live? The improvisation webinar is pre-recorded. I'm going to be heading out of town, so I pre-recorded that yesterday, as a matter of fact. So that one, Leah, it turned out really good, though. I think it'll be really beneficial. It's actually kind of long. I usually try and do webinars that are around 30 minutes, and I had so much to talk about in this one that it wound up being closer to 50 minutes long. But there's a ton of great stuff, Leah, so hopefully you'll attend that. Joe is here. How you doing? From Florida. Mick is here. It says here, how much time you actually spend practicing? That's a really good question. I don't spend near as much time anymore practicing. I play a couple hours a day, at least. But just rudimentary, in terms of fundamental rudimentary practice, it depends on, like, if I've got a gig coming up or a rehearsal with a band or something, I tend to kick into my more hardcore fundamental practices, a week or two prior to that to really get things going. But I've kind of stabilized in terms of that. What I practice a lot now is a lot of creative stuff. Like I spend a lot of time trying to focus on creativity, new ideas on the fretboard, different ways of seeing things, different ways of understanding things, and then certainly writing and things like that. So, and I keep myself really busy with these remote collaborations that I do. And they're a lot of fun because they require technique and memorization and all those things that you use for learning songs, but it tends to move a lot faster. And then, of course, once I'm done with the creation of all of that, then I have to do the video editing and the audio editing and stuff like that. So that stuff isn't even guitar related, but it's still stuff that I really, really enjoy doing. So hello, greetings to you too. Oh, hi, Steve. This is Brian from Facebook. Awesome. Pob from Facebook. Very nice. Let's see here. What do you do in economy picking when you have 2 notes per string? Well, if you have 2 notes per string, if you think about it, it doesn't really work as well, because if you only had 2 notes, you'd have down, up, and you can't do another up, you see? So it really doesn't function for a 2-note kind of sequence. You can't really do it. Because no matter what, you could start with an up and then do a down and do it that way. But that would be very awkward for me. I would always start with a down. So 2 note per string, it doesn't really function well for that. It's either for 1, if you're playing an arpeggio, which is, again, what we call sweeping. But it really is economy picking. That's what it is, or directional picking, whatever you want to call it. And then up, same thing. You'd be doing the same idea. So let's see here. Does the blues have a more deeper or richer sound on 9 or 10 or other gauge strings, Clayt asks? Well, to be honest with you, Clayt, anytime you put a thicker gauge string on, you're probably going to notice a little bit of a tone difference, but you have to remember, the hard part about it is, it depends on what all the, what your amp sounds like and all those sorts of things. You have to experience it yourself, Clayt, and see whether or not putting a thicker gauge string on makes a deeper tone for you. On an acoustic guitar, you notice it very much. On an electric guitar, it's harder to notice because, the sound is being affected by so many things on its way to the amplifier. So it kind of depends. If you find that it makes a big difference and you notice it and it doesn't change the quality of your playing in a detrimental way, then by all means, that's an age-old conversation, is whether it does or doesn't. There are people that say the guitar cable you use changes the tone, or the battery that you use in your effect pedal changes the tone, or, there's so many different things that can go into that. So for me, when it comes to electric, I worry less about the thickness of the string in terms of tonality and more in terms of the way it feels when I play. Am I able to execute the things I want to do in a comfortable sense? Now, that doesn't mean that every once in a while I don't get this wild hair that says, try a thicker gauge. And then oftentimes I'll move up to that and wind up kind of moving back. It just depends on how I feel about that. But there are people that will adamantly tell you that the tone sounds entirely different, and that's wonderful. For me, it still has to come down to playability. But on acoustic guitar, I notice it quite a bit more. So let's see here. Tony says, hey, Steve, how about we do a songwriting, like putting together a song and how to record it and mix it? Yeah, we'd have to get back into our recording and mixing stuff, which would be great to do. We did that for about 6 months, and then we're taking a little break now just so everybody can get back to asking some questions and things. But that's not a bad idea. Songwriting, like putting a song together, Tony, that's a really good idea. Let me put some thought into how we could do that. That would be kind of cool. You know what I mean? Because there's whether or not we would be able to interact with that song or how we would put together the song. Like for me, songs are one of two things either when I'm writing them. Either I'm writing them from a riff perspective or I'm writing them from a layer perspective. So in either way, I mean, you might have songs that have riffs and layers. But very much so, that's the way I tend to write, is either I write from a riff perspective of making up something that I like, or I layer things and make them thick. And so maybe that is something we should try and, I'll think on that, Tony, but if you have any ideas, make sure that you let me know, okay? Let's see here. John is here from Rockaway Park, New York. How you doing, buddy? Tom is here from Minneapolis. Very nice. I'll be heading to Minneapolis in a couple of weeks here. Let's see here. What DAW do I use? Let me try and get caught up here. Maybe I can throw these on the screen so you all can see them. There's just a ton of stuff here, but let me see if I can find this here. There we go. So here's where we are. Okay, what DAW do I use? I use Studio One by PreSonus. I have used many different DAWs or DAWs, whatever you want to call them, over the last 15, 20 years, but in the last 3 years, I've settled on Studio One. It just makes the most sense for the way that my workflow works. And so, I've used Reaper, and I really enjoyed Reaper. And I used Cubase for many years. But then Cubase, for some reason, I started having some issues with the software. It would lock up or different kinds of things like that. And if you do any recording, you know very well that those are terrible things to happen when you're recording or mixing or whatever it is you might be doing. And so I really tried to stay with Cubase for a while, and I couldn't take it anymore. And I got out of the Steinberg game. And then that's when I started kind of moving around to different things. Now, I'm not a Mac user, so I don't use, Logic, that sort of thing. And Pro Tools I used a long time ago, back when I was in college, and I just never stayed with Pro Tools. Again, Pro Tools is great, and obviously it's an industry standard that everybody uses, but for me, for workflow, for being able to do things very quickly, Studio One by PreSonus works the best for me. And I have the professional version of that. So let's see here. Craig says, Steve, what is the tonal difference between diatonic 3-note per string and 3 notes per string on the pentatonic scale? Well, there's no tonal difference. It's just the way you want to approach them when you play them, right? So if you're doing a diatonic 3-note per string, if you think about it, most of the time, the diatonic is 3-note per string, right? I mean, the discrepancy starts happening when you play a position that you've learned from a person or a book or whatever it is that you've done, a video, and you start dealing with shapes that use 2 and 3 notes. So now, there's nothing wrong with that. And it's not that I don't ever use that shape. I'm using A minor right now, A natural minor. So what's happening is when I get to the 4th string, I only have 2 notes on that. And then when I get to the 3rd string, I have to shift back 1 fret. And there's nothing wrong with that at all. Again, if I was playing, in a position, I would be perfectly fine using that. But the purpose of the 3-note per string is really 2 things, to be completely honest. Number one is it creates more symmetry. So when you're playing, the patterns begin to, especially in certain positions that you play in, the patterns begin to take on more of a symmetrical look. And the second thing is because now everything is uniform with 3 notes on each string, you can start applying more of a practiced approach to your picking, to make it faster. You see, where when you have 2 notes on some strings and 3 notes on other strings, it becomes hard to do that. Now, if you move to doing a 3-note per string pentatonic, it's not changing anything really tonally. It's giving you that same purpose. So if I was going... Now, they're harder when you do the pentatonics because they get really, really, really wide. And you'll notice right away, if I start doing 3-note per string, one thing that you're going to find is I'm doubling up on notes. And that's where, like, string skipping might come in. To get that kind of sound. So 3-note per string pentatonic is different because, again, it gets much, much wider than the typical diatonic would, and you wind up doubling those notes. But that would be the purpose more so, would be those same 2 things, is more of a symmetrical idea, and most certainly to try and make them faster, more unique sounding, kind of quirky, because they can have 3 notes on the string. So you can, whether you're doing hammer-ons or picking or whatever, you can do things faster and quirkier with them. So that would be the main reason, Craig. Okay? Let's see here. Could you provide an example of a shuffle-type rhythm Stevie Ray Vaughan may have used? Well, remember, shuffle and swing are 2 different things. A shuffle rhythm would be straight, right? So if I was going... So if I was doing something like that, like House is Rockin', sort of, right, by Stevie Ray Vaughan. If I was in, again, whatever key. Now, Stevie would tune down a half step, but if I was in A, the shuffle that we think of is this thing. Let me move to a different camera here. So what I'm doing here is I'm playing an A power chord, and the added 6th, if you will, that blues sound, is coming from playing on the same string as my ring finger, 2 frets higher. Okay, so that's one way to make that sound more bluesy, more, Stevie Ray Vaughan, but really anybody. And notice how I'm just tapping that one time. I'm not leaving it down for 2. Not that I couldn't, but it sounds a little more traditional to just lay it down on 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I could add it 1 fret higher yet and go to this minor 7th. See, and I get that kind of sound by doing that. Okay, now that's the shuffle, if you will, okay, that idea. Now, if we think about the terms shuffle and swing, okay, versus straight, let me make sure I'm saying this right. So when we say the term shuffle and we say the term swing, what we're referring to is this heartbeat rhythm. Bump, 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 bump. So that's how we get the groove of a shuffle or a swing. Okay, and then we have, so let me kind of clarify some of this for you. So you have a straight groove, which is like marching, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Okay, and then you have the shuffle or swing groove, okay, which is the heartbeat, bump, 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 bump. And the heartbeat is really just a triplet, 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 triplet. But to give it that bluesy feel, what we do is skip the middle one, and we get, instead of getting 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, we get 1, 3, 1, 3, 1, 3, and that's how we get that blues sound. Again, calling it a shuffle or a swing. Now, some people refer to this action as the shuffle, okay? But really all I'm doing here is I'm just adding in these cool notes. And I could add that over a straight groove or a shuffle groove. see? So hopefully that makes sense to you, okay? Let's see, John says, when in your style of playing, do you impart hybrid picking? Sometimes I use hybrid picking. I don't use it as much as some players do because I didn't grow up really utilizing it as much. I use a lot of legato and things like that, but do I utilize hybrid picking? Absolutely. Hybrid picking is another great way of being able to make efficient ways of being able to move. Let me get this off the screen there so you can see here. So like if I was playing a scale, that's really nice too because the pick you don't have to wait for the pick. This hand's already ready to go to be able to play that. Now you might use hybrid picking in some of the licks that you play. See? And it sounds really cool too because the pick doesn't have to go there. You can just wait. You can just wait for that and then play whatever it is you're going to do afterwards. So hybrid picking is really great. I like to use it in 3-note string. Things like that. But yeah, hybrid picking is awesome too. It works really, really good. Okay, thank you for that. Let me get that off the screen there. Peter is here from Idaho. How you doing, bud? Let's see here. Jeff says, do you recommend using heavier gauge strings for drop tunings? Yes. Yeah, if you're going to tune way down, you're going to want to. Otherwise, your strings are going to get really spaghetti-like. And then the problem is that they don't stay in tune very well. That's something that I found in the last, 5 years doing a lot more recording than I used to in my studio, is that the stability of the guitar when you're recording with it makes all the difference in the world. So if your strings are, really loose or really thin and you play and you're always putting them out of tune, the problem is that, again, live, you probably might not notice that as much, but when you're recording, it becomes a real problem. So that doesn't mean you have to use super thick strings again. It depends. Like I have some guitars that I have set up to use for recording in the studio with thicker strings that I would normally put on them. And I do that on purpose because they're used for recording my rhythm tracks. So I use those guitars for tracking rhythms and things like that. So they stay in tune really good because the strings are thicker on them. But when I go to do my solos and stuff, I don't use those guitars because they don't feel as comfortable. Now, again, if I was doing a harmony solo or something, like right now, I'm working on Peace of Mind by Boston with a bunch of different guys. And, there's all those cool little harmonies inside Peace of Mind, if you know that song. But they don't require a lot of any of the normal stuff that I use. So I can use a thicker set of string for the recording of those to keep things tighter. Now, as you start tuning down, of course, you're just dropping everything down, so the string's getting more and more slack. So you have to be very careful to make sure and find the right string that kind of matches what you're looking for, either the comfort that you have in standard tuning that you still want in C tuning, for instance, when you tune down 2 whole steps. Or you might want that a little bit heavier, right? And then sometimes what you do is you wind up getting a guitar with a different scale length. Might be a little bit longer because when you tune down, that scale length is going to help keep that tuning stable, more stable with a longer scale length. And that longer scale length is going to be affected by the string gauge. For those of you that were asking about string gauge, that makes a difference too. So for instance, I don't mean to get off subject, but just so you understand this. If I take this guitar right here and I put a set of 9s on it, and then I grab, for instance, one of my Paul Reed Smiths that has a shorter scale length, and I put a set of 9s on that, they feel too loose on there because the scale length is too short. So they feel really flobby. So on my Paul Reed Smith, anything with a shorter scale length like that, I tend to put thicker strings on them. Not way thicker, but it might be a half a gauge or a full gauge up or whatever it might be. And then what I try and do is take my favorite guitars that I use a lot for soloing and things, and I try and balance them out so regardless of the scale length, regardless of the tuning, they all kind of feel the same. That doesn't mean they're going to feel exactly the same. They never do. But at least I can get them kind of close. And then I have a couple other guitars that I don't use as much that I put thicker strings on, and I use those for recording rhythm parts and things like that. So hopefully that makes sense to you, Jeff, and everybody else that was asking about tuning. Okay, let's see here. I am relatively new to guitar. What is the difference between arpeggios and scales? They seem very similar. Well, a scale is playing all the notes or the notes of the scale, right? If I play a scale, if I play, again, whatever it might be, if I play A minor, I'm playing all the notes of that scale. Or if I play C major, I'm playing do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. I'm playing all of the notes of that scale. An arpeggio is just the notes of that chord. So if you wanted to play an arpeggio of A minor, you would simply play A, C, and E. Now there's many different ways you could play that across a guitar, but you wouldn't play that. You'd only play A, C, and E. That would be the arpeggio. Now you could play multiple octaves of that arpeggio. You see, that's how we start working these things across the fretboard. But that's all I'm doing. Or if I played a C major arpeggio, I could do that wherever I want. But that arpeggio would just be the notes of the C chord, C, E, and G, the root, the third, and the fifth. Or if we want to make a seventh chord, then we would add the seventh in. Or if we want to make a ninth chord, then we could add the ninth chord in. But the arpeggio is just the notes of the chord. Okay, arpeggio means broken chord. So if you think about it, John, even if I went to an A major chord and I went like this, I'm playing an arpeggio, even though it doesn't really seem like I am. If I pick through it slowly, I'm playing an arpeggio of E or G or whatever it might be. Now, the truth is, in reality, you're always playing arpeggios in guitar, right? When you strum a G, you're still playing an arpeggio because you're not hitting all 6 of those strings at the same time. The difference is the ear is hearing it as one thing. So we call it strumming. It's a chord, right? But it's not like a piano where you can play the notes all at the same time. We can't do that. We have to start at 6 and go to 1. We just try and strum through as fast as we can and make it sound like it's one thing, you see? If we slow that down, then you're playing an arpeggio. Okay, let me just check my tuning quick here. That pesky tuning. That should be good. All right, perfect. Let's keep going here. Thank you so much for the question. Let's see here. I wish you did a rapid fire course on how to gain speed. Boy, I've done a lot of stuff on how to gain speed. But I'll tell you, the biggest thing is, again, there's no easy way to getting fast. You have to learn to be efficient with your picking, and you have to learn to relax. So let's say, for instance, just real quick here, just a couple of things. So for instance, it has to start with your picking, right? And then it has to start with the strength of your hand and then the synchronization of these two things. That's how speed works. So I can only pick as fast as this hand's going to be able to move, or vice versa, and I want to keep working on those things. So if I could take, for instance, and just take a string, and sometimes what I'll do is this is called tremolo picking, and I'll just pick that string. And just focus on my picking technique, relaxing, all that sort of thing. And just develop my picking technique. Just how fast can I pick, right? Just random power of picking. Right? Whatever it is you want to do, you might pick some songs. Like I was used to use stuff like Slayer. I would learn Slayer songs, to work on my picking, to my speed of picking, different songs like that. And then over here with your fretting hand, you need to keep working on strength because, again, speed picking, when we talk about speed, you're always dealing with 3-note per string stuff. There's only so fast you can go with 2-note. And yes, there are players that play very fast 2-note stuff. but it's just physics. If I have more notes on a string, I can go even faster without having to shift to new strings every time. So what you need to do is start developing strength with your fingers to be able to, if you think about the two primary categories, it'd be 1, 2, 4, and 1, 3, and 4. Although all of these subcategories, and again, I have all kinds of guitar courses that talk about this stuff, but, developing strength of 2 finger, 1 to 2, 1 to 3, 1 to 4, all that kind of stuff. But then what you do is you move into doing 3 finger, 1, 2, 4, 1, 3, 4. And you develop strength by doing legato and different things like that to develop strength in these. Because again, this is where your speed's going to come from. How fast and how strong are these fingers when I move them, right? And then what I do is I start taking these 2 things and I start putting them together. How fast can I do both of these, synchronizing these? To be able to play whatever it is I'm trying to do. Right? Over and over and over. And so what I would do is I would practice all this legato stuff, all this strength, speed, stamina stuff over here. And then I would practice my picking, and then I would take patterns, just straightforward patterns like one I did today. And I would do that, I would set a metronome. Doodle diddle doodle diddle doodle diddle, right? And I would do that over and over and over, just trying to get it as fast as I could until it gets, because again, speed can't just be speed without time. I mean, at some point, the speed has to be speed with time too, so we can understand it. Somebody said rapid fire. Robert said rapid fire by Judas Priest. For me, rapid fire isn't super fast. Rapid fire, I'm trying to think of some other songs that are kind of like rapid fire, where they kind of exist in this realm of not slow and not super fast. It's not super fast. It's in this realm where it works your muscles. I love songs like Rapid Fire because that's what they do, is they're not so fast that you can shred, but they're not super slow either, so you've got to maintain. See, and then if we're talking about Judas Priest, then you've got songs, for instance, like Painkiller, which I love to play. Painkiller's great for down strumming, down picking, working. Like you see, like those songs are great for developing a fast down pick versus alternate picking. So, and let's not forget that that's really important to be able to develop that. So a lot of times you'll find the answer in songs like Robert had mentioned Rapid Fire. You might find the answer in learning some of these songs, and then what you do is you try and play along with them, and then you go, oh, I obviously am not fast enough, so let me stop this, let me figure out what speed I can play at, and let me start working on getting myself faster to to play along with whatever it is I'm trying to play. That's what I used to do. That's how I learned how to play fast was, some of the big songs that I learned how to play when I was a kid were like Angel of Death. That was a little bit later in, but, I remember one of my biggest accomplishments when I first started learning how to play Master of Puppets, I couldn't play it down. And I was playing it all wrong because I couldn't play it as fast as it was. And I would sit and practice to that stupid thing. I would turn the song off and I would set a metronome and I would just sit there. Over and over and over. Trying to develop those sorts of things. And then another one that I used to do a lot was Whiplash by Metallica. And then it moves into this. And again, not blazing fast. right there, you see? So, but again, when I was a kid, it was blazing fast for me, but just there's all kinds, so you can learn a lot from songs, but then you take ideas and you just practice them over and over and over. So hopefully that helps you a little bit. Okay, hey Dan from Bozeman, Montana, how you doing, bud? Mike from St. John, Indiana's here. How you doing? Let's see here. Is there a, what does this say here? Is there a GuitarZoom for the piano keyboards? Looking around, just can't find something as good as Zoom. Boy, I don't really have anything that I can think of off the top of my head. Maybe somebody else knows something that would be piano for, similar to what we do here. I don't have anything, unfortunately. Sorry about that, but Arthur says it's 11:12 here in Sydney. Missed the alarm for the 4 a.m. this morning. That's okay. I'm glad you're here now. This is awesome. So let's see here. Michael says, hello from Anchorage, Alaska. How you doing, bud? And let's see here. Who else do we got? Okay. Let's see what this says. Using the cage system, I'm comfortable with the G pattern, okay, to solo, but how do I use some of the other shapes too? Well, okay, so like for me, when it comes to caged, there's really a couple of different things, but the most important thing is that I'm trying to visualize the caged system, the caged shapes that I need, either spread across the fretboard or, for me, more importantly, in the same spot. Okay, that's how I kind of try and see this. So, for instance, if I was trying to visualize something like, let's say, I was looking at A, D, and E. Okay, A major, D major, and E major. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take this A major and decide where I want to play the cage shape that I want, okay? Now I could play here, I could play the G shape down here that you had mentioned, right? Or whatever it is. I could move up here and do this one, okay? And then I've got D coming up. So let's say I'm gonna stay here with this A shape right here, okay? And then D comes up. Well, I could move up to D and do this same thing, right? But instead what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this D shape right here, that one right there, and then when the E comes up, instead of just moving up, I'm going to take the E that's sitting right here, okay, which is the C shape, but on E. Okay, so then once I start visualizing these, A and D and E sitting right here, I can then start trying to figure out a plan and see, I might use that. Like, let's say I was playing over a song with somebody else, and they're playing right, whatever. So I start making some sort of a thing. Right, whatever it might be. So you start trying to visualize those, and then also underneath that, you've got the whatever scale. In this case, the A major scale is sitting right there as well. So if I start trying to turn this into a solo, I could think about see? So there's a million ways you can approach this. So for me, it's either a chordal vamping kind of thing that I'll start doing, or what I'll do is, because again, I could look at A up here. D, E, well, let's see, what would we want to do? Maybe I'll go back. Now I'm on A again. So. See, I could make a vamp like that if I wanted to solo with it. Very simple kind of thing like that. So that's how I try and utilize my cage stuff when I'm playing stuff like that, okay? Let's see here. My favorite guitar right now. Ooh. I don't know. Well, my favorite guitar that I own will probably always be this one. But you know, the Charvel that I bought not very long ago, I really like to play. I have another one that I might be getting pretty soon. I've got a Maton acoustic that I just got that I really love to play. I'm actually just getting some new strings put on it right now, so it's not here. But it's been fun playing acoustic again. But you know, it's hard to say. I love these thinner necks, and I'm just so attached to this Ibanez stuff. It's hard to get away from it. But there's another guitar that may be in the wings that I might be looking at getting sometime soon here. So Johnny says, I've got 11s on his PRS S2. Perfect. Yeah, I use really thin strings, and I still have 10 or 10 and a halves on my PRS. So you're right. I mean, a PRS can take those thicker strings because the scale is shorter. So let's see here. What do we got here? Marcy says, I never knew that or had noticed. I only own a few guitars, so I guess I wouldn't notice that about gauge and strings. Yeah. And some people notice a lot of different things like that. For me, it's, you know, I'm always dealing with different sounds too. You know, I'm always exploring different sounds from my Kemper and different things like that too. So everything's always changing with that. I'll get to Clayton in just a second here. So my tones are constantly shifting too, so just trying out different things. So changing my strings would be another part, but then every time I change a different tone, I've got something else going on. Let's see here. Clayton says, do you feel that now more and more effects are incorporated in amps, that pedals are slowly getting phased out? I don't think so, Clayton. I think pedals will always be around because there's always going to be a market for people looking for a new distortion pedal, a new tone, that sort of thing. I don't think so. I think it's kind of fun, and you know, for guitar players, it's kind of fun to own those kind of things and buy something new and explore it, and those sorts of things. I myself, unfortunately, just don't really ever have time for that sort of thing. But I, again, have lots of friends that just love that kind of thing. So anytime somebody comes out with a new pedal, they're on it. You know, so I don't think so any more than, you know, the bigger question I think would be, you know, will the tube amp survive? You know, with the decline of tubes, like less and less companies are making tubes anymore. You don't have TV companies and radio companies making tubes anymore. So tubes are less and less necessary for the standard household. So will tube amps stand the test of time, or will everything wind up becoming a digital product? You know, I think that's almost more the worry for me is will that happen? You know, I hope not. I mean, there's something incredibly awesome about a tube amp that I still don't think digital can replace exactly. But like here in my studio, a tube amp is just kind of pointless because I'm just wasting the tubes turning it on in here, because I don't turn up loud in my studio, and everything's getting recorded direct into my computer, so I don't need that volume. So for that sort of thing, using plugins or the Kemper or something is absolutely perfect. But for stage, you know, in some bands I play in, I use a Kemper. In some bands I play in, my heavier bands, I still like a tube amp. I love the sound of it. It isn't as it doesn't have the variety that my Kemper does, but it doesn't need it because I'm playing in one of my heavier bands. I only need a couple of sounds anyway. You know, that's all I really need from it. And then for that, I run my pedals, you know. So I don't run a lot of pedals, but it's nice to have a few. So let's see here. What tuner am I using? Well, I use these. I don't have it on here right now, but I use these D'Addario Micro. I got one sitting right here. Micro tuner, they're called. NS something, NS12 or something like that. But they're just these tiny little tuners that D'Addario sell. Those are what I tend to use because they're not very. You can hide them pretty good and people can't see them very well. They're just usually a little mark that's on the headstock. So that's what I'll use if I'm not using a tuner that's built into, you know, the Kemper or whatever. That's what I'll use. Let's see here. Craig says, whoops, sorry. Thanks for the 3-note per string answer. You are most welcome. And here we have somebody else from Anchorage, Alaska. How you doing? And what does this say? Used to have problems with chords, so now I play a guitar with only one string on it. Well, that might be the answer right there. I'm not so sure, but let's see here. Hey, Steve, was running late, but glad to be here. I'm glad you're here too, Angelo. That's awesome. The hand is doing better. Good. Just take it easy. That's the most important thing. Give yourself time to heal. That's very, very important. Okay, let's see here. Check out German Schaus for speed guitar instruction. Awesome. Thank you, James. That's awesome. Let's see here. What will the upcoming improv course be like? The upcoming improv course is about how I see the fretboard when I'm improvising and the things that I need to prepare for. Like, the most important thing is when you hear the music, being able to analyze as quickly as possible the key, the tempo, the groove, and what options you have available to you at that tempo in that key. And then being able to think about how to approach those solos or your improv skills to make it sound as musical as possible. Because the one thing that people, I think, do wrong when it comes to improv is not realize that there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. When we're improvising, we're playing in real time. But I always tell people that improvisation is kind of a lie, because when we think of improv, we think, oh, we just make these things off the cuff. We make up all these things. And we really don't. I mean, it's just a regurgitation of things that we've done before, but we're not in control of when they're going to come out, what order they're going to come out, in what shape they're going to come out. But it's stuff that we've done before. It's not like improvisation is closing our eyes and playing upside down or something, and all of a sudden these crazy things start happening. It doesn't work that way. It's all things that we've done before. It's just in what way do they come out, and how to approach the fretboard to try and keep things creative. So when I started making this improv course, I really was thinking it was going to be, a couple hours long. And it wound up being way longer than that, because there was just so much stuff once I started doing my research and study, and really just, I sit with a computer and I just think and I jot down ideas. I use mind maps and I just jot down ideas. And then once I started getting these ideas, I was like, okay, well, I should put these kind of compartmentalize these ideas into bigger ideas. And so it wound up just becoming a really much larger course than I had originally attended, with a lot of information. And then we jam back and forth in there. There's a lot of really good stuff. You need to check it out and see if it's something that can help you. So let's see here. Okay, another question about caged here. So the biggest thing is understanding when you're playing. There's a lot of ways of using it. Like for me, I don't really equate give me 1 second here. Turn that to performance there. So let me put on a sound like this. That'll work. Okay. This is kind of my sort of bluesier tone for my Kemper in this guitar. But so let's say we were in E, right? So we're going to play in E. So the one thing that people will do is they'll play their position, which is great, okay? We need that. Okay? But along with that, if we can visualize that E chord sitting right there, see, we can get those arpeggiated sounds. Or if we start moving around the fretboard, see, I can get more of that kind of chordal melodic sound by visualizing the cage system as it's happening versus just seeing the scale. Like that. I can start visualizing. And getting more of that kind of sound, which I use all the time. So my E chord, I might have the E sitting right there, or sitting right there, or sitting right there, right wherever it might be. Like those kind of fragmenty things. I used to love Hendrix, so I love those sounds, which are total caged. Using those kind of sounds. You get more of that kind of sound when you play, which I just love. So hopefully that helps. Okay. Let's see here. Hello from Michigan. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you for the kind words. Okay. Let's see here. Here's another one. Cage system messes me up between the chord shapes versus the scale patterns. And see, for me, and you're right, but for me, that's the important thing, is being able to visualize them happening at the same time. And once you learn how to do that, you've got a lot of power, because you can start thinking very small and still get some really beautiful sounds. If you're moving from E, and then A comes up, and then D comes up, whatever. Back to E. You can move back and forth between those and make all kinds of really beautiful sounds. So E, A, and then back to E. Let's say C sharp minor comes up. To B. To A. To E. It's just, learning how to visualize your fretboard is so important to making better sounding music. It's really, really important. Okay? Let's see here. How does my Ibanez S rate to... Nothing compares to my Gem, unfortunately. I wish it were true, because I get kind of lumped into this whole Steve Vai thing, and not that I don't love Steve Vai. He's a great guy. He's a great player, and absolutely adore the guy, but I don't need the Gem. I just need this feel. So, it's hard to find guitars that feel like this, even different brands. I've come close with some of those. Like I said, the new Charvel stuff is really nice. The new Jackson stuff is really thin. Some of the other companies, the necks tend to feel a little bit different to me. And not that that's bad, but I know what works for me. I know what feels the best to me. So it's hard to get as comfortable as these Gems. But understand, even with the Gems, like, this is the thinnest the neck that the Ibanez Gem was ever made with. So for instance, I have some other ones, some older ones, and the 10th anniversary. And the 10th anniversary, well, I thought maybe I had it over here, but the 10th anniversary is actually even a little bit thicker, but it still feels really beautiful. But that would feel a little bit closer to the S. So let's see here. What does this say? I'm taking your blues licks course, and in one lesson you play with a jam track. You play a lick and then allow us to play the lick. I do that in the improvisation course. And we could certainly do something like that in our live sessions too, if everybody's got guitars and stuff. That might be kind of fun, okay? I just can't hear you, obviously, but I think that would be a good thing that we could certainly do. I think that's a great idea, Leah. Thank you. Okay, cool. Well, I tell you what, everybody, I know we've got so many other things here, but I'm going to be getting going here. I've got to go home and have some supper and all that sort of thing. So hopefully that helped you a little bit. And yeah, check out the live session, even though it's not, I shouldn't call it a live session, but the webinar, I should call it. I think you'll enjoy it. And then if you get a chance, check out that improv course and see if it's something that you would dig. And if it doesn't work for you, that's okay. The most important thing is that you keep practicing and you keep trying to find ways to stay inspired. Externally for sure, but also within the context of your playing. And I think that's something that's really important, is the more you try and jam over tracks and really understand, which again is the point of the improv course, is analyze that track and make sure it's something that works for you. Don't just, because you found it on YouTube doesn't mean it's right for you. Like, what key are you playing in? What key are you working on? What scales are you playing in, right? When you're working on your scales, are you doing them in E? Are you doing them in D? Are you doing them in A, right? and your exercises, your licks, whatever. What tempo are you doing these things at? And if you don't know what tempo you're doing them at, you're going to want to figure that out. Because when you find backing tracks or jam tracks to work with, you want that jam track to reflect what you're working on, right? You don't want to find a jam track that's in a different key and a different groove. Groove is huge, which we talked about a little bit before, but at a tempo that's way too fast or way too slow for you, and then you start trying to play and nothing feels comfortable to you. Now again, in the bigger scheme of things, yes, we want to play in all kinds of different keys and all that sort of thing. Of course we do. But we need to start somewhere and develop that before we start worrying about all these other things. So, if you're always practicing in the key of E, find something in the key of E that suffices what you're trying to do, what you're trying to build with the cage system, which again, I talk about all that stuff in the course, but whether it's a cage system or a scale, pentatonic, diatonic, whatever it is. But if all of a sudden you find something and it's in the key of G and you're not working in the key of G, well, now you're kind of regressing in your practice because you got to shift everything up. Now, at some point, that will become a really great thing. But are you ready for that right now? These are the things you have to ask yourself, okay? So we have one more question here. Can there be a norm on a time span for getting better at sweeps and speed? 15 minutes a day? It's hard to say how long something that's going to take. 15 minutes, I'm just getting warmed up in 15 minutes. I'm just being honest with you. When I used to practice to develop my speed, I used to practice for hours on end, hours a day. And I'm not saying that to make you feel bad, and I'm not saying that because everybody should be doing that. I'm just saying at that time in my life, that's how I developed speed, was practicing literally hours on end. I would sit with these things. I would practice these exercises over and over and over, and that's just one thing. Like you've probably heard me talk about, like I just had a practice course come out. You've heard me talk about buckets of practice, like you have your fundamentals bucket, and then you have your theory and visualization in your fretboard bucket, and you've got your creative bucket, that sort of thing. And you're trying to learn how to do a songs bucket, right? All these different things. When you have 15 minutes a day, you can't reach into all of these different buckets. You can barely reach into one bucket. And I'm not saying that to make you feel bad about it. What I'm saying is if you only had 15 minutes a day, and I'm not saying you do, but let's say you only had 15 minutes a day, what you'd really have to do is assess what's the best thing to do with that 15 minutes, right? Because it's like if you had to eat every day and you only could eat a spoonful of something, would you put a cookie on there or a half a cookie? Or would you put rice on there? Like if you had to sustain yourself and live on it and you didn't have a lot to live off of, you'd have to really think about what you're choosing as far as food goes. And practice is the same thing. So if you only had 15 minutes a day, it's going to be really hard to develop any element of speed, let alone everything else that you probably should be doing that would be really fun for you to be doing, learning songs and playing chords and whatever it might be. Now, if you have an hour a day, but you want to spend 15 minutes of it on speed, again, what I would do is I would start developing right hand speed, left hand strength, dexterity, that sort of thing. And then once you have those developed, start developing some synchronization. That's what I would say for that. So anyway, everybody, take care, stay positive. Thank you so much for your time and for hanging out with me today. This is really awesome. And stay positive, and of course, keep practicing. And if you get a chance, head out to the that webinar tomorrow and check it out. So take care, and I'll talk to you soon.